We are on the record.
Okay. Good morning. Today is Tuesday, February 24, 2015. This is the 10 a.m. work session of the commissioners. All three commissioners are present, and for those of you who don't know us, to my right is Commissioner Creighton, Janet Creighton. To my left, Commissioner Richard Regula, and I'm Tom Burnaby. And sitting to my far right, and the Master of Ceremonies is Mr. Brant Luther, our County Administrator. Just by way of background, again, for those of you who have not been here before, this is a work session of the commissioners. It is not a formal public hearing in any manner. All work sessions of commissioners are public meetings, and therefore this is being tape recorded. And so we have a taping system available in this room. We regularly schedule work sessions every Monday and Tuesday morning, usually on topics of immediate or specific county business, such as pending litigation matters and other related things, projects and so forth. We also schedule work sessions on matters of more general concern. I would consider this to be a topic of more general concern for us to learn about and to discuss. It's important to emphasize, and we run into this on many occasions, boards of commissioners are creatures absolutely and totally of state statute. We're controlled as to our authority and our jurisdiction as to what we can and cannot do by state statute, and we only have authority as to what the revised code prescribes. I think everyone is aware of this, but we have no authority or jurisdiction over the location of the proposed Nexus pipeline. That jurisdiction rests solely with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, which has very broad authority to include broad environmental authority and otherwise to involve both state and other agencies involved in the review. That FERC process, again, as everyone is aware, is underway. We do understand, however, that we as a board are entitled to provide our comments to FERC as part of the regulatory process, the same as any other affected citizen, and on behalf of affected citizens. And since we've been asked by representatives of the coalition to reroute the Nexus pipeline, they have come in on, I believe, 2 occasions, as recently as February the 6th possibly, which led to this meeting today. They had asked if we would write a letter generally in support of their position and or adopt a resolution in support of their position, somewhat akin to what has been done by Greene, by Summit County, by Medina County, and some other political jurisdictions. As a result of that request to us, we are conducting today's work sessions, for the reason to better inform ourselves. Again, the work session is informal. It is conducted by me as president of the board. We allow questions at any time by members of the board, and I will also permit some controlled dialogue between the representatives of the coalition and the representatives of the pipeline through me again as chair. And finally, we do have a limited amount of time for today's work session. Again, we schedule these generally for 1 hour or a little bit over 1 hour. I know that both commissioners have matters that they have told me previously scheduled on their agendas this morning, later in the morning. So hopefully we're going to get out of here by, I would say no later than 11:15. Given that, we do have representatives from the pipeline here this morning. They called in when they read in the newspaper that we were going to conduct this hearing or this meeting. And again, of course, we have representatives from the coalition. I thought perhaps that the best approach to today's meeting, and again, the primary purpose is for everyone to hear about this, but for us to inform ourselves, would be for representatives of the pipeline to provide to us, perhaps a overview of the project or a current status of the project as to where they are for approximately 15 minutes, and I would like to hold you to that. Have the coalition representatives then respond and tell us where you are with everything that you're doing and your efforts to, find an alternative route and so forth, update us on that. And that will allow us probably a half hour, a little bit over that, to have additional questions, dialogue, and so forth between us. So given those ground rules, whoever is here on behalf of the Nexus pipeline, please proceed. And again, we do have these screens over here, so maybe you want to look, because I think, Grant, we can use both screens, yes, for any presentations. Yes. And so maybe you want to turn your chairs in that way, wherever you have the best view. But go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is John.
Yeah. And again, we would ask again, because we are taping this, again, therefore we can't identify it. And whoever speaks, if you would just state your name, please, and provide an address for the tape record.
My name is John Sheridan. I'm responsible for government relations for Spectre Energy and the Nexus gas transmission pipeline. My address is 890 Winter Street, Waltham, Mass. 02451. We appreciate...
I'm sorry, you said Waltham, Mass?
Waltham, Massachusetts.
And you said Winter Street.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I gave it up already, huh? Sorry. We appreciate the invite to come in and talk about the Nexus project. We do have a PowerPoint presentation that we thought we'd walk through. You know, a few of the issues we wanted to touch upon, just a little bit of who we are, a project overview, some of the regulatory agencies that we have to deal with. We'd like to touch upon safety, and you know, also talk about our environmental stewardship as well as our outreach activities and really the economic impact that we feel that the project will bring to Stark County. And then we'll certainly open it up to Q&A. We know we're under a short time, so we'll just jump right into this, if that's all right. The next slide is just a snapshot of who Spectre and DTE are. Spectre is well known for its project execution. Since 2007, we have placed into service 60 projects at a capital expenditure of about $8 billion. The reason why we mention this is because we're able to do this, it's really because of our level of execution, which is threefold. It's our unwavering commitment to safety, it's also our environmental stewardship, and it's also our communication and our collaboration with landowners, officials, and stakeholders, which we feel is very important to move a project like this forward in the community. DTE and Spectre are the lead developers of this project. And Spectre's subsidiary, Texas Eastern, has been operating in the state of Ohio since 1947. We have over 1,000 miles of pipeline that we have been providing transportation in a safe and reliable manner to both gas companies such as Columbia Gas, East Ohio Gas, as well as on the electric side, the Duke Energy's A&P and Dayton Power and Light. DTE, in its own right, has been operating in Michigan for well over 100 years, supplying service to over 2 million customers. The next slide, just a snapshot of our North American assets, and to put it in perspective, there are about 300,000 transmission pipelines in North America. Spectre has 22,000 miles of those facilities that run along the eastern seaboard that allow us to tap into multiple supply sources and transport that gas to market. We're the conduit that can get the gas to the market that needs it the most. The next slide is an overview of the Nexus project. Nexus has the ability to transport these clean burning domestic supplies of natural gas to markets in Ohio, Michigan, Chicago, and the Dawn Hub in Ontario. There is a need for additional pipeline infrastructure to transport this gas to these markets. In addition to that, Western Canadian supplies of natural gas have decreased over the past several years. So the market is definitely seeing a need not only to meet operational reliability issues, but also to meet the growing need for natural gas in their service territories. The pipeline is capable of transporting up to 2 billion cubic feet a day of capacity, enough to heat 8 million homes. If you look at the map, this is a 250-mile greenfield project. It begins with a receipt point in East Ohio, where the Utica Shale is, and it ends with a receiving point in the Michigan southeast area, where we interconnect with existing facilities. That's the blue line. And then the gas will continue in a northerly direction through 2 existing lines, the green and the maroon line, to other markets. When we roll out a project like this, we start with a beginning point, an end point, and then we identify a study corridor. And that study corridor helps us to evaluate the environmental impacts, the cultural impacts that may be out there along the pipeline route. But the corridor is also selected because we like to be able to push gas to those markets that need it the most. And so when evaluating the initial route, we have a study corridor that looks at markets such as local gas companies, such as power generators, such as commercial or industrial large development areas that could use the gas. So we look for opportunities there, and we also look for existing utility easements that we can parallel, because it lessens the impact to both the environment and to the landowners. Playing into our outreach and the 600-foot study corridor that we introduced to the community, back in the third and fourth quarter of last year, we sent out landowner letters to landowners along the utility corridor, introducing the project and then asking for survey permission. That survey permission allows us to get boots on the ground, again, to do the necessary environmental and cultural research that we need to do, that enables us to put that information into an application and ultimately file with FERC. The fourth quarter of 2014, we held landowner informational meetings. Again, to be transparent and straightforward, we wanted to make sure that we could get the project information out to landowners in a timely manner. The LIMs, as we refer to them as, are voluntary, and they were sponsored by Structure Energy in the last quarter of 2014. FERC in January of 2015 granted the project approval to enter into the pre-filing process under the National Environmental Protection Act. I like to refer to it as the pre-season spring training in baseball, where we come out and everybody suits up and we begin the outreach. Basically, this is a collaborative pre-filing application process which allows landowners, local officials, stakeholders to review the project information initially and to identify any issues or concerns prior to us filing an application with FERC, which we hope to do at the end of the year. Following along the timeline, FERC expects to hold scoping meetings in March and April of this year. They will invite the public in, and comments will be read into the record. And once that scoping session is closed, FERC will respond to all those concerns in writing for the record. Following that, we hope to submit an application to FERC at the end of this year. And then that begins the formal review process, which is another 12 months. And then we're hoping that FERC would issue a decision December 2016, granting us authority to move forward with the project, and then construction would be in 2017. In service November 2017. The next slide talks about the regulatory agencies that are involved in our review. FERC does take the lead, Mr. Chairman, as you mentioned earlier, and they work in conjunction with the Army Corps of Engineers, the U.S. EPA, Fish and Wildlife, as well as Ohio EPA. All these agencies, FERC has its own process, and then the other agencies, federal and state, have their processes which allow the public another opportunity and multiple opportunities to provide comment on the project. The next slide we wanted to touch upon is safety. Safety is our license to operate. The Nexus project facilities will be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained under the standard of the U.S. Department of Transportation and Construction. During the design phase, as I mentioned with the routing, optimized routing, we look at following existing utility corridors wherever possible, and it's through the public information, the public process, that we're able to further redefine or define that route by listening to concerns from landowners, officials, as well as the agencies that are involved. And ultimately, FERC will make the decision on the final route for the project. Also built into that design, the pipe will be made of high-strength alloyed steel. The pipeline will have a minimum 1/2 inch diameter thickness, wall thickness around the pipeline, which will meet or exceed US DOT standards.
Is that pipe made in the United States?
Well,
it hasn't been sourced yet. It
Okay.
will just be a matter of schedule and time.
Is there manufacturers in the United States?
There are some that we purchase from, yes.
Okay, because I get that question of where the pipe's coming from.
That's always the preference. Sometimes they're not available. They're booked out sometimes years in advance, so it'll just come down to availability and timing.
I think once we get further into the review process, we'll have a better idea of what we're doing on that end. We'll certainly circle back with you. During the construction phase, the welds will be 100% X-rayed and are ultrasonically inspected, which is above the industry standard. The pipes and welds are sealed with a protective coating. We also install cathodic protection, which prevents corrosion along the pipeline. And the pipe can be shut down immediately using remote control valves if there was ever a need to do so. And once the pipeline is up and running and operating, it's monitored 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have also liaison meetings with first responders. We have training. We have landowner outreach awareness for landowners along the pipeline route. We also do a direct assessment on the pipeline using integrity management tools and inline inspection tools to make sure of the integrity of the pipeline, and that's done on an ongoing basis once the pipeline is in service.
Have you done a 42-inch pipeline before? Is this unusually large? I mean, that's another thing I hear, that these 42 inches, I mean, is that normal?
It's a normal size. We just built a 42-inch pipeline in Jersey City and another city right next to Jersey City. The next slide touches upon the environment. We do comply with all federal, state, and local environmental regulations, including Ohio EPA for wetlands and water permits. Jumping to the next slide, it's a breakdown of the pipeline that is in Stark County. We have approximately 20.4 miles, and it's divided up into those 4 townships that are within Stark County. We've been reaching out to these communities as well as the county. We do so prior to, as we have during the permitting process for the project. Just summarizing where we are to date on our outreach with Stark County. We began our outreach back in 2013, 2014. We held our landowner meetings October 8th. We've had some outreach with the Stark Oil and Gas Partnership as well as Stark State College, which, by the way, we think is a world-class oil and gas program where we definitely, their resources, their curriculum. We certainly hope we can continue that dialogue as the project moves forward. We've had official briefings the week of October 26th, not only with Stark and Summit County, but other counties, in an effort to make sure we're getting an updated information out to elected officials. We held our open house on February 9th, and again, we're here today to brief the commission, and we certainly will be happy to come back anytime to provide updates on the project. I think looking ahead, as I mentioned earlier, FERC is going to hold their scoping meetings in March, April timeframe, and then there will be a regional job fair. Once we get further into the review process, we really, we want to be good neighbors, as we have been in other parts of Ohio since for many, many years, and we look for opportunities to reach out to the local labor force wherever we can to offer opportunities to work on the pipeline, whether it's directly or indirectly. We think there are benefits there as well.
And John, if you could please just keep us kind of on a schedule, just kind of tie up in a couple minutes today on your slide.
We'll do.
We'll come back and talk necessary.
Yes, sir. Brian, you want to jump in on the economic slide real quick?
Sure. My name is Brian Hicks, 21 East State Street, Columbus, Ohio. I'm a consultant to Spectrum Energy. One of the things that we've done is commissioned a study that Ohio State University did for the project to look at economic impacts. So the economic impacts of this project are pretty significant. If you look at the total number of jobs created by the project, it would be about 4,834 jobs over these are all in Ohio. This is not Michigan jobs. These are all in Ohio jobs. Those are direct jobs, indirect jobs, and then induced jobs associated with the project. Significant labor income, about $455 million of direct labor income associated with those 4,800 jobs. And then the value added, which is kind of what those people will spend, as they stay in our hotels and restaurants, will go up over $500 million to $543 million. And then we also took a look at how those jobs were broken down by county, and you can see for Stark County, the job numbers are over 401 jobs in this county for the pipeline, labor income over 38 million, and value added about 46 million. Finally, the last piece of economic information we took a look at was I'm sorry, if you could go back to that, was local and county tax revenue. This is primarily property taxes. And in Stark County, with approximately 20 miles, the annual tax revenue that the pipeline would pay to Stark County is about $3.5 million.
And just to add Commissioner, and to close out the presentation, safety is our core value. Communication and collaboration with landowners and other stakeholders is extremely important as we move this project forward. We look forward to coming back and briefing you again if the opportunity presents itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Igo, I don't know whether you want to lead off with the coalition or whoever, but the floor is yours.
Very good, thank you. Again, thank you for having the opportunity to come back today.
State your name, please.
Yes, my name is David Eigel. I live at 2258 Nimmishill and Church Road, Canton, Ohio. We appreciate the opportunity to come back and have a little more time today. You know, again, I represent the Coalition to Reroute Nexus. We are a grassroots landowner organization that was formed by property owners all the way across the state, really. We have sort of an informal board that's been kind of leading this effort. I'm one of those board members. Our goal today is pretty simple. One is to educate and inform, as we like an opportunity to get into a few more details about why we're concerned about where this pipe is being run. I think it's important to emphasize again that we are not against the Nexus pipeline. We appreciate the job that this is bringing. Matter of fact, our plan will be to increase those jobs and to increase the opportunities here in Ohio, because our route, as we will get into, will be a little bit longer than their route. But our main objective is to find a better place to run this route. I spent 30 years in the pipeline construction business. I know what's involved in running this through heavily populated areas, and I know what the dangers are, so I will spend a few minutes later on to talk about that. But the first goal is really to educate and inform, and the second thing is to ask for your support in our effort. As you know, I think today we have about 14 governmental agencies, counties, cities, and townships that are supporting our effort. We'll provide copies of those today, but we're asking for your support. We believe your support is important, that FERC will listen to this. This is an important variable that FERC considers in its decision. The biggest problem that we think that exists today with FERC is the lack of pipeline setback standards for these kind of pipelines. These 42-inch pipelines are kind of a new thing in the industry, and we don't think that the federal regulations address the dangers associated with this pipe of this size and pressure. What you'll find with FERC is that they are primarily just concerned about the environmental aspects of these systems and not the safety of them. Under the federal law, it's possible for this line to be run right next to somebody's house. In fact, we can show you instances where this line is probably less than 50 feet from somebody's house. And that's not unusual with the route that they've selected. With that, I will end my introduction. I will kind of serve as the MC today for our group. We will have pretty much the same individuals. We also brought another landowner in Lake Township that's going to speak for a few minutes. With that, though, I would like to turn over the next part of our presentation to Paul Jarosky. Paul will talk about who the coalition is and what our objectives are.
Thanks.
So my name is Paul Jarosky. I live at 7730 Spieth Road in York Township, Medina County. And like David, I'm one of the members of this informal board of directors of the Coalition to Reroute Nexus. And our mission, is we recognize that there's a need for pipelines to transport Ohio's energy to market. Okay. However, we believe that there's a much more sensible and safer process and route to accomplish that task. And we're here to describe that in more detail. Our mission to date has been to inform and to educate and to persuade Nexus to choose a route that avoids the heavily populated counties like Stark, Summit, Medina, Lorain, for an area that is less populated. Okay? Our goal, and to date, I'm not sure that they're listening to us, okay? Because I've submitted at least 25 letters and emails asking for a meeting to sit down and talk about reroute proposals, and I've yet to have had a meeting. You know, is Nexus really interested in input from stakeholders? Our goal, you know, along the way, our organization is made up of individuals working individually towards a collective mission, okay, and a goal. And our goal is, when we look at the number of pipelines that are currently proposed to bring Ohio's energy from southeastern area to its ultimate destination, we think that, you know, the process of routing and siting these things needs to be reviewed, because there's so many of them. There's 4 of them right now, and there could be however many more in the near future. And we think the concept of a pipeline safety corridor, where all these large diameter, high pressure transmission lines would be located, is a forward-looking concept that ought to receive serious consideration at this time. And we've been through the FERC process trying to make that point. Yet, very recently, the company has opposed that idea, which, you know, I just find incredible. When they say that they're concerned about safety, yet they oppose the idea of creating a safety corridor to house these very large pipelines. So our organization mission is to educate and inform and persuade them to move this to a less densely populated area and to join with us, citizens, okay, to create a pipeline safety corridor that would protect the citizens of Ohio, would protect the pipeline itself, would protect property values, and ultimately it would demonstrate respect for individual property rights.
Just out of curiosity, have you ever, both groups been in the same room together to hear each other's concerns and
No, it's
questions? I
interesting.
don't know.
Whenever there have been public meetings with public officials, we've been told we're not invited. This is the first opportunity. I guess the city of New Franklin, the city fathers there, held a meeting back on December 17th. That's the only other opportunity. But there were, I'll estimate 100 people in the room, so only a limited number had an opportunity to ask questions. So this is the first
I'm
opportunity.
glad at least we had the opportunity to put you in.
Yeah.
I
That's
think on
perfect.
February 2nd, there was a meeting with Nexus officials, FERC officials, Mr. Drosky, and a number of his quorum representatives prior to the Medina County open house. I know that meeting lasted for approximately an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes. So we had both the company officials, including the project manager, as well as FERC officials at that meeting.
That is true. We did attend a meeting, but there was not one word said in that meeting by Spectre. It was basically a presentation from FERC to us about the process, to educate us on the process. But the Spectre did not participate and comment in the meeting. And I will say, you know, one of our points that if you look at their very own charter, what the charter's company is, you can read very clearly that they value having win-win relationships with all parties. Yet, you know, they will not sit down and talk to us about what our concerns are. So I just
Well,
want
I'm
to
glad
make.
I'm glad that we're in a forum, by the way, where they can actually hear
Sure.
your presentation and position on some things and vice versa. But
We appreciate
go ahead
that.
with whoever.
Okay, yeah, we'll try to keep this moving on your time schedule. The next presenter for us will be David Mucklow. You heard David before. David will talk a little bit more about the process and what our goals and objectives are.
Hi, I'm David Mucklow, 482 Mayfair Road. My comments are just very brief about, and I'm reiterating what I spoke last time about the NEPA scoping process. That the reason we asked for this meeting was to have an opportunity to get the Stark County Commissioners to take a position on this. It's so important at this stage, based upon the meetings that we've had with FERC, that this is the time for all the various bodies and governments that are along this proposed route to speak up and state what their concerns are and the concerns of their constituents. And obviously that's why we're here, is to get the commissioners on board with us. Again, we're not out to try to stop this pipeline. We recognize there's a lot of economic benefits to it. But we just believe that this particular route was a poor choice. And there's a lot of reasons why we believe that. And there are better routes available, as Wayne Wheatley will present here, that they've been, if it wasn't for the city of Greene getting on board and really looking at this issue and looking at the alternate routes, I mean, you're going to be impressed that there really are much better routes that only add a little bit of length to the pipeline and avoid these conflicts. They're called conflicts. Where the pipeline gets real close to the structures, wetlands, roads. In the case of Greene, it goes right next to our Portage Lakes Career Center, right next to a high school. Last night, the board for the school board, for the Greene School Board, unanimously voted in favor of a resolution to reroute the Nexus pipeline. And it just, it's been board after board, body after body, who wants this rerouted. And now's the time for everybody to speak. And that's why I'm here just to comment that this process provides for everybody to speak, every stakeholder to speak up. And now's the time to do it before the costs get too high for Nexus. We're doing them a favor. We found better routes. We're going to save them money in the long run. So that's my point.
Thanks, David. Our next presenter will be Wayne Wheatley with the City of Greene. Again, we want to thank our coalition, thank the city for kind of taking the lead on this. We have spent a tremendous amount of time and effort looking at alternate routes. We have state-of-the-art technology. We're using the same kind of software that I think Spectra probably uses. It's the industry standard software. We've looked at wetlands, we've looked at a comparison, and we've tried our best using our experience, my experience in the construction industry, to try to avoid structures and minimize the damage with that. And still, at the same time, try to make sure that if this pipeline gets built, that they can still reach a lot of those same markets. We're still trying to keep this pipeline up into the Cleveland market area where they're in close proximity to potential markets. So we recognize that that's a legitimate objective of the pipeline, but with that I'd like to pass it to Wayne and let Wayne get into some of the statistics. I think you'll be very impressed with the job that we've done so far. This wasn't something we wanted to do in the beginning, but we finally recognized we had to do it. And so this is what, it's not a complete process yet, but this is what our objective is to present to FERC. Wayne.
Good morning. Wayne Wheatley, I'm Director of Planning with the City of Greene, 1755 Town Park Boulevard, Greene, Ohio. First I want to talk a little about economic development because I'm a land planner. I started my career, short career in Shelby County, and came up and worked with Jerry Bixler for a number of years here in Stark County Regional Planning. So I'm well aware of Stark County as well as Southern Summit now, as I've been up there a number of years, 20 of them to be exact. So with that, as this project is proposed to cut through Greene, almost 6+ miles through Greene, we're really concerned with the land planning aspect of this. As you guys know, the Akron-Canton Airport is a real gem in this region for both Akron and Canton, Stark and Summit County. As a great announcement is happening this morning to another airline, certainly out of there. So with that, we really are concerned with the economic development. We see this corridor right now. They want to come through one of the city parks, okay? Now, we acquired that park for a couple of reasons. We knew we had some issues up there at that particular location. It is the site of the former abandoned mines as well. We've had subsidence up there, which we think is pretty important for a 42-inch pipeline. We can live with it. We farm part of it. We did it for one of our local farmers, the Beast family. The farm parts that we don't use. It's a 90+ acre park. And they're farming part of it, and he tells us when he hits a subsidence. And we actually have quite a few of those occurring. We're concerned with this environmentally, but that's a safety issue. I'm not saying they can't address it, but you don't know when these are going to pop up. As we go across 77, coming from east to west, we hit another location, and hopefully Stark County was on board with us a couple years ago when we made a large effort to keep people in the region. They're still here, fortunately. They did not build their world campus, but they're still here, located in Green with multiple locations as well. But we had two, I hate to use a name, but we had a local developer that owns quite a bit of land holdings in that area. One, we already have a planned development proposed for one south of Wise Road, right through where this comes, just north of the airport, called Park Place. We're afraid of what these type of pipelines, because we work with them all the time. We're not going to say we don't have pipelines for Green. We have convenience Ohio's storage fields. We have a couple petroleum pipelines. We have to work around it. I'm not saying we can't, but when a developer has plans already submitted for future development, and we have connectivity with Aggregate and Airport to continue to help it to grow, we have a major concern that we're around as it impacts regional economic development and jobs that are going to be here permanently. Mr. Mucklow commented a little bit, as you go east, we start hitting some residential neighborhoods. And when you go over by Portage Lakes Career Center, as they follow the First Energy's high transmission lines, they're like 360 kVs, there's actually a couple series in there. They don't have much choice, either go into people's backyards or go on the Portage Lakes Career Center's property if they follow this route. That Career Center has 475 day students every day. Those are high school age kids. Then they have their adult programs, which have been great. Their welding program can't put out enough welders, primarily because of the oil and gas industry. That's great. It's a great program. But again, they don't have much leeway either to be on Portage Lakes Career Center property and impact some soccer fields that they allow the City of Green and regional kids to use, or go into people's backyards. Very tight into people's backyards.
Are they going on existing right away? You
No,
mentioned power lines.
I don't think First Energy is going to allow them within their easement. But the study corridor follows the Ohio Edison's transmission lines to a certain degree in Green, and then it cuts off. One of our other concerns is the number. I think, again, when everybody starts to look at these things, we do a lot of GIS mapping. When you look at these things, you try to take the easiest route. And why are things not developed? Well, Green is also home to part of Portage Lakes, and the feeder ponds, creeks, streams that feed that. So now as we go west, we're less dense. We'll admit that. We're out of the urbanized area of both Lake Township and Green, and we're in the southwest corner of Green, which is less urbanized. Less urbanized primarily because of, one, the lack of public water and sewer, but also because of the wetlands. A large amount of wetlands exist on the west side of Green, southwest. Those are there for environmental reasons. So again, it's very easy to come up with a mapping, but not looking at where they're going through and impacting wetlands. City of Green is a Tier 2 community under the National Pollution Discharge Eliminations Program. They'll have to follow strict guidelines through Green in regard to stormwater pollution prevention plans. And that can be a lot of effort on their part. Dominion does it for every pipeline that they replace. They're very beneficial in working with us. They talked about an alternative line. We did do some mapping, and quite honestly, we brought it out of Lake Township, Marlboro Township, and came pretty much due east out of Kensington, and brought it through southern Stark County, following some existing pipelines. And then we do turn north, and this is just one scope. And what we were looking for in just one simple alternative pipeline routing was the reduction in impact in residential, commercial, churches, schools. And we think we've shown that pretty much hands down. I'm putting some glasses on to read this. And this, again, is just our staff, me and my GIS administrator doing some work from aero mapping. In Stark County alone, their current route within 1,500 feet of the proposed pipeline There's over 1,027 people impacted, residential. If we use an alternative route, we can drop that down to 475, and that's again just taking one of our routes. And we don't do pipeline planning every day. We're land planners. We don't do pipeline planning. In Summit County, if you pull it out of Summit County, of course, that goes from 1,724 residential structures to 0 because it's out of Summit County at that point. But I think if you look across the board, I think Dave may have passed something out to you that we generated. Basically, where we've gone is from Columbiana, Stark, Summit, Wayne, Medina, Lorraine County. The only one that actually increased residentially impact was Wayne County. And again, that was our mapping and trying to route this around Wayne County. The other side of our alternative mapping is that we can show wetland impact reduction from currently about 73 acres to 25 acres, and that's just in the 100-foot corridor. So I'll be glad to elaborate on this. There's a benefit that I heard here today. There's no doubt, we're not trying to push this in Stark County. What we're trying to do is get it into a more rural area with less potential, or follow a safety corridor that they've talked about. What we've taken is the Dominion/Columbia Gas transmission line, I think it's Columbia Gas, and parallel that to a way, and then part of it's the Rover pipeline. But I heard this morning about the property taxes that will come. This does increase the length of miles within Stark County, southern Stark County, extreme southern Stark County. I think therefore, if the numbers were adequate, if we added from 20 miles to say 30 miles of permanent pipeline, that local revenue would then definitely go up by a third. So I think Brian put 30 miles in there versus 20. I think you see additional revenues in the way of taxes, if those numbers are correct. I think you have $3.5 million, is that per year? For 20 miles. For another 10 miles, which is what we currently have going through Stark County. We'll admit, we're not trying to push this in Stark County. We're looking at the rural level of service for Stark County, and we took it to the extreme south. So with that, there'd be more taxes, more property taxes being generated in a less urbanized area than Stark County.
Do you have a map of Stark County that would show roughly the proposed pipeline?
Actually,
proposal.
Did you get to
We do, but we're going to withhold presenting that to the public yet, basically. But you know, I can describe to you what it's
South
done.
of Route 30, or
It is going pretty much directly east-west, south of Canton. It follows an existing Columbia Gas transmission pipeline.
But it will go all the way across the bottom part of Stark County.
Yes, south of
So,
Canton.
in all due respect, you really are shifting the burden from Summit to Stark. I mean, I don't care how you paint the picture. You are shifting the burden to more of our residents and taking everything
Not
out of
necessarily.
Summit. Well,
When
these
you
are all
say more,
zeros.
Well, one additional statistic we don't have yet that we're still working on is we're going to count the number of property owners affected between these two routes. Keep in mind, their route, because it's more urbanized, is going to be across a lot more smaller parcels than ours is going to be primarily across larger farmlands.
Yeah, and it's interesting, you know, land use certainly is an issue, okay? I mean, the use of the land. In Medina County, I went and talked, you know, there are studies out there that say there has no impact on property values, but that sort of flies in the face of what seems logical to me. So I went and talked to Mike Kovac, our county auditor, and took him a picture of my property and where I think that I was going to go. And he said, Paul, you can quote me on this. Any residential or development property across which this pipeline travels will be devalued. The amount is going to be specific to the situation and the facts of the matter. So he did some math on my property, okay, which is a residential property that has some development lots along the road. He estimated 13 to 18%, possibly higher, he said. Now the flip side is land use. Farmers can farm over the top of this pipeline. So the land use doesn't change. It doesn't change significantly from their intended purposes. So land value, you know, I guess by By conclusion, you could say the land use doesn't change, the property value doesn't change, hence more rural land and owners of more rural land are possibly more likely to accept this kind of pipeline.
Plus, I'd like to add, our goal is to establish these pipeline safety corridors. The route that we've selected across Stark County is paralleling existing Columbia Gas Transmission and the Rover pipeline. So when you say it's affecting more property owners in Stark County, these property owners are already being affected by these kind of lines. And what we're trying to avoid is Stark County becoming a spider web, if you will, of these pipelines. I think the way this industry is developing, this is not the end of the pipelines like this. And the current technology is actually looking at building larger pipelines. Now there's discussions of going to 48-inch lines. So my point of it is, now's the time to act, because if you don't take a stand today, this will turn into, I believe, more of these kind of pipelines across the county.
Yeah, and it's interesting how you say shifting the burden. These folks make it out sound like this is a wonderful economic benefit. Is it a benefit or is it a burden? What I think our point is, the way this process works with the federal government is the company gets to pick the route. And they pick the routes because, in my opinion, they take the shortest route between the starting point and where they want to deliver this. Okay? They want to deliver this to their Dawn hub in Sarnia, Ontario, where they have it's owned by Spectra Energy. They want to provide energy to their subsidiary Union Gas in Ontario. It has 1.2 million customers. You can read it on their website. So to get from Kensington, Ohio to Sarnia, Ontario, they take the shortest route.
But John, doesn't some of that tie into the commercial customers that you mentioned before, that you want to have them access to Chicago or Cleveland or Toledo or where the users are?
Yeah, they'd be in Chicago, they'd be in Michigan as well, Michigan Consolidated Edison, Michigan.
And that's why you want to get it closer to?
Correct. Plus, we're also looking at dropping gas off to potential new customers in Ohio as well. We're working through that right now to secure those market commitments.
Is there any shortage of gas in northeastern Ohio?
Let me go on with, I recognize.
I'm sorry, I'll take over, I apologize.
Yeah, let me please continue here for a second.
Yeah, let's try to, if we could, let's kind of get back, just because I don't want to spend a few minutes having some dialogue back and forth.
Okay. Let me try to, wrap this up pretty quick on our part. The main part that I like to play is talk about pipeline safety. We know that the incidence of these explosions are minimal, but they're still a reality. They still happen occasionally. And to me, the most significant thing that people don't understand about these lines comes down to PSI, pounds per square inch. This line is projected to have a maximum operating pressure of 1440 PSI. And one of the things that we've done is come up with two very viable studies that have been done. One is by the Gas Research Institute, and the other is done by a well-known Dr. Rhodes, who's looked at this specific question of, what are the consequences of one of these lines exploding. One of these studies has a very nice chart in it where you can go and you can look up the size of the pipe and the pressure, and it will project what the blast zone radius looks like. And basically this blast zone is an area that pretty much everything will be destroyed. It's a distance that the fire department also cannot get within if one of these lines explodes. For a line this size and pressure, the Gas Research Institute projects that zone is about 1,000 feet, maybe 1,100 feet. The second study done by this Dr. Rhodes, if you look at his information, it's very technical, but he projects about 1,500 feet, or about a 500-meter blast zone. To help confirm those numbers, you can actually look at real pipelines that have exploded. And a good example that you may be familiar with was an incident that just happened on December 11, 2012 in West Virginia. This is a post-accident report. This was a 900 PSI line, 20-inch in diameter. So about half the size of this pipeline, but 900 PSI. And Brandon, if you hit that video, I just want you to see, you have to see to understand what one of these things look like when they explode. This was actually where it happened underneath Interstate 77. It closed the road down, actually melted the road. This blew up several homes. Fortunately, nobody was killed because they weren't home at the time. But this is a pipeline, and if you look at these studies that say what the blast zone for a pipeline like this is, it says about 350 feet. Now, the actual incident report...
Can you get the audio too?
Yeah.
Because that's really...
I mean, this is like a jet engine. This particular incident also had a control room and it had shut-off valves in it. But this particular incident, by the time the control room operator understood that there was an incident, even though he had received phone calls telling him that, he didn't believe it at first. It took him over an hour to shut valves off and shut this pipeline down. But I think you have to visually see this. I don't like to use this as a scare tactic, but you have to understand the magnitude. Now, picture a pipeline twice this size and another 500 pounds higher in the city of Greene, next to houses and schools. Would you like this? Would you like to live within 5 or 10 feet of one of these pipelines? So, I don't think we need to overemphasize that. I'd like to go ahead and stop that. And let me close this, and I want to show you.
Let me just stop one thing. Anybody from Nexus want to just comment on pipeline safety in that particular incident?
Yeah, one thing that I think we need to point out is the difference between a line built today and some of the existing lines in the past. This incident I'm very familiar with. This line was not routinely inline inspected. They didn't perform inline inspection. The failure was caused by corrosion. For the Nexus pipeline, that would be fully inline inspectable. We would run every few years inspection devices through the line to look for any corrosion that would prevent something like this from happening. This line in the video was not inline inspected.
I might want to add, though, is that is true, but several years ago there was a 48 or 42-inch pipeline running across southern Ohio that was known as the Rockies Express. I personally went and witnessed a section of that pipe that line exploded within the first year it was put into operation. It was a similar line, I think, that was running about 11 or 1200 psi. So even though that was a brand new pipeline that had just been put into operation, a piece of that pipe came apart after it was put into operation. Now, fortunately, it was in a remote area that didn't hurt anyone. But it's an example to me again is that no matter what it is, whether it's a jet plane or something, these things do happen occasionally, and that's again why we're really here. That's why we think this line should be in remote areas and not through heavily populated residential areas.
In fact, PHMSA, the Department of Transportation sub-agency, records and catalogs and dissects all of these incidences, and I think it goes back to 2000, okay? On average, in the United States, 3 out of every 4 days, there's a pipeline incident. And they describe an incident as a death, involving a death or an injury that requires hospitalization, $50,000 or more of property damage. And for liquid pipelines, I forget, so many gallons of liquid. But, so although they're rare, 3 out of every 4 days.
What's the safest way to transport gas? Pipelines, truck, or rail?
Pipelines for sure. Yeah, pipelines are certainly the best way to transport this. And let me just try to wrap up quickly here. I'd like to have one more presentation with Woody later. Woody is a large property owner in Lake Township, perhaps one of the best development properties in Lake Township, in an area that there are a lot of properties, large, expensive homes being constructed currently. So Woody, if you'd like to...
And David, can you, before you do, just generally again, so we have an idea, so your proposed route is going to be kind of along the Route 30 corridor or south of the Route 30 corridor?
It's south of the route. Yeah, I can kind of show you. It kind of comes, out in this area. It comes north of Minerva.
That's the existing Dominion transmission line?
Existing Columbia Gas.
Columbia
Gas, right. It comes across southern Stark County about right down through here. So it's well below Route 30, and then it comes out here, and then it comes up the west side of Worcester. So it's a long distance south of Route 30, and it's paralleling this Columbia line, and then when it gets about over to here, in the corner, that's when it jumps onto the Rover pipeline. So then it
would run within a half mile of the Rover pipeline in Bethlehem Township.
Right. We will be providing a map. We're just not quite to the point yet we want to release it, but I would expect we should have that ready to go here probably in the next couple of weeks.
Would Columbia let them on there right away?
No, they probably wouldn't let them on the right-of-way, but they could go right next to the edge of the right-of-way so that they would be in close proximity. And so I just might mention, one of the common misperceptions is that if a line like this explodes, that you don't want these lines next to each other. This particular incident in West Virginia, there were 3 similar pipelines in close proximity. When that line that blew up, about a 20-foot section of that pipe landed about 40 feet away, and it did not do any damage or did not affect those other pipelines in that same right-of-way.
So when you talk about safety corridors, you really don't want the pipelines too close together, even though you want them in a common corridor area, but they have to be X number of feet or yards
Sure,
for
that's right.
safety. Okay, let's do the lander real quickly,
Yep.
and then I want to jump back to Nexus.
What do you want to jump up?
Hi, I'm Dr. Woody Lark. I live at 177 Lake Pines in Lake Township, Stark County. We've lived there since '82, and that's when we purchased the farm. We have about 130 acres, and presently I retired as an oral surgeon, and we're going to kind of use this as a nest egg for development. And around the area, we have many houses that are 800,000. Ellis Herb is on the trustees at Lake Township and has a house on the same street and is developing the north side of Lake Pines. And our plan was to do a development of 5-acre lots on the south side of Lake Pines. And if you look at the map, which we can give you, it shows the the Nexus pathway across the land, and also the farm buildings. We have an equestrian center that we have up to 40 horses. Certainly any corridor in there with a quarter-mile of blast is a threat to that, as well as the whole community there. There are houses on either side that are closer than my farm is, and that our concern, since the horse industry is slowly diminishing, was to establish a residence allotment there at 5 acres, and we came up and we're working that up at 100,000 for each 5-acre lot, and that would be comparable to Ellis Herb, who is on the north side of Lake Pines. And what we are looking at as far as the economic impact is simply that Nexus, if they get the eminent domain, pays $10 a foot, a linear foot. And if you go across our land, that would give us about $14,000. Presently, I pay $22,000 to Stark County for the land that I own in that area. So I was looking to enhance the lake neighborhood with more buildings, and I think last week you heard from, I think, Mr. Zambrowski. This gentleman I ran into, he knew nothing of the pipeline, and he talked about his new business of excellence in sports cards, I think that he built in Green, and how he had looked around for his land. It's very easy for me to sell these lots because we have the equestrian center there, and people could, use that. And so consequently, my concerns are about rerouting in order for really maintaining the integrity of the land that we have in an urban development. And to show you we're grassroots,
Okay, I need you
I
to bring
put
us to wrap
together
quickly, please.
another article, which is the same blast that came out of, could you put that?
Sure.
Out of West Virginia. And we're not a totally knit organization, but we go to meetings and we do speak out and try to answer questions, what our concerns are. And that's what I came here for today, was to give you my vision. And now I'm stuck with, do I try to quickly sell that acreage when there isn't any route and then dupe people into this, you know, and then they're stuck with the 5-acre lots that I've sold. And that doesn't sound very ethical. And since I was in the health profession, that isn't something that I think I would go forward with, but it traps me. What do I do with my nest egg?
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, you heard a bunch of different areas of comment and so forth, safety, routing, and so forth, whatever you'd like to address in response.
Yeah, maybe just one quick comment regarding the discussion earlier about DOT reportable incidents. I don't dispute the numbers, but I just want to add a little context to that, if I may. One of the requirements, as mentioned, is $50,000 in damage, but the way that the DOT looks at that, that has to include the cost of gas. So and they've also revised their guidance over the last few years. That's driven the numbers up a little bit. So if I've seen instances where a safety device may act like a relief valve in the amount of gas that escapes. If that value of natural gas exceeds $50,000, it's a reportable event to DOT. That's one of the things that drives the numbers up a little bit. These aren't real safety events, but they are what DOT calls a reportable incident. So they do collect information on that.
In addition to that, we'll have remote control valves along the entire pipeline route, and we'll be able to shut down the gas if we ever had to, immediately through our gas control center in Houston that monitors the pipeline 24/7. Also, on the rerouting issues, we'll need to do an alternatives analysis of all reroutes and submit that to FERC, and then all the agencies, including Ohio EPA, the other federal agencies, they all will weigh in on this alternatives analysis. So there is a process in place, and we're in the process of researching and pulling information together. And ultimately, it will be FERC that will make the decision on the pipeline alignment at the end of the day.
So what are your thoughts about, how seriously do you look at, for example, the proposed alternative? Because I do understand the concept of the further away you get it from, more dense residential and commercial areas, the potential for an incident is the same, but in one case you're perhaps in open farmland or less densely populated areas versus another area where it's more densely populated. So how much consideration would you give to what they're proposing, and how does this work out at FERC? Do you continue forward with your proposed route and fight for it and allow them to do the same, or at some point in time do you actually seriously take a look at theirs, or does FERC tell you to seriously take a look at theirs?
We need to seriously take a look at all of them. We do build pipelines in urban areas. We just built a pipeline into Manhattan and Jersey City, two of the most densely populated cities in North America. But we take all reroutes that come in seriously, and we take a hard look at it. The study card that we have right now in front of us, we're trying to drop gas off to potential markets along that pipeline route. So that's one of the driving factors with the study card that we have now. But also, we have a receipt point and a delivery point. And so we have a beginning and an end point. We have a study card, so we're trying to work within that study card. But to your point, we will look at all and any suggested reroutes, minor or major, and submit, our thoughts to FERC and have them, respond back.
Any questions for them through me? Would you like to ask them?
Back in September, I think Nexus had a meeting at Stark State, and I talked to some of the representatives there, and they said there were no connections that were going to be used in Ohio. It was just a source of getting it to the hub in Canada. And so now, lately, I hear these hotlines coming off. I was wondering if we could enumerate them. Is it Belden Brick that you're going to be supplying to? I went to a Rover pipeline and presentation, and Mr. Belden got up and said what a wonderful, job this was, that the pipeline was going through. And I assumed he meant because they were going to be getting it from Rover. Now I hear, and now I just want to know, is there a change and who's going to be coming off of your pipeline rather than just a distribution pipeline?
I don't know if you're able to answer that. If not.
We have, there are customers in Michigan. As an open access pipeline, we need to provide gas wherever the market is. Chicago would also benefit from that. The Dawn facility that you identified is a storage field facility where a lot of that capacity will come back into the U.S. because that's where the gas is needed. And we will look for, as the project evolves, the market becomes more viable and more interested in tapping into getting reserves into their market base. So we're looking at industrial areas, we're looking at power generators, electric generating facilities that need to convert to natural gas in order to comply with EPA regs, new generating facilities, as well as the local gas companies in the area. We think there's still a potential there to drop gas off in Ohio, and that's what we're working towards.
Before Dr. Lara, anybody else? Before I don't want one person just to.
One question that I have is, they've talked a lot about transparency and being open and free with what their plans are and information. One question I have is why are we sealing information? We would like to have access to their list of stakeholders, the property owners that are affected by this. They've gone to great lengths to protect and hide that information. We would like to have equal access to those landowners so that we can contact them ourselves.
FERC doesn't allow us to share that. It's confidential information.
It comes from a public record.
We cannot disclose the landowners that we're working with.
When does FERC take in all the comments? Like, when will FERC have this basically, I don't want to call it a hearing, but this discussion? Is that 6 months down the road, or are they taking written comments now? Or how does this whole thing flow?
Yes, sir. Scoping comments will be held late March, early April. FERC will hold those. There'll be formal public meetings, and people can testify and put their comments on the record, and then FERC will respond to all of those accordingly after the scoping session closes.
John, I would add that we did 8 open houses in Ohio in the first 2 weeks of this month, February, and there was FERC representatives at each one of those open houses. They had a table, they were presenting information. Folks that were coming to the open houses were able to interact with FERC directly there.
But they'll have a formal
scoping meeting. They had not set the dates for that. We think it's going to be late March or early April.
However, the process of commenting started when the pre-filing application was approved in, it's called January 1st. So anyone, okay, can start at the present time making comments on this project, and it's ongoing. I mean, there are 250 or 260 written comments that have already been received by FERC. Scoping hearings, from our understanding, are just another means by providing those same comments. You get to stand up, you get to speak your piece, you have a limited amount of time. But they are no more meaningful or less meaningful than providing a written comment today. So you can pass a resolution or write a letter and deliver it at the scoping hearings. But you can also pass that sign that letter and pass that resolution and insert it through e-filing or e-comment at the present time.
At FERC's formal meeting, there will be a stenographer, there'll be a transcript, and it'll all be pulled together. And then there'll be a response from FERC from those comments as well as everything that's been filed in the pre-filing process, letters and so forth. So everything will be addressed by FERC sometime in the third quarter, late second quarter of this year.
However,
One important thing to understand though about the FERC authority is that within their scope of jurisdiction, they cannot consider pipeline safety issues. The way pipeline safety works is it doesn't kick in until the pipeline starts construction, and then once it's in operation, at that point, the DOT takes over pipeline safety. And they have jurisdiction over pipeline safety, but FERC cannot review the route of a pipeline based on the danger to residential consumers and that type of thing. It's not within their scope of jurisdiction. But it is important that FERC will look at this comment process and will consider comments, especially by public entities, in opposition to that. And that's why we have made so much effort to gain support from the various public entities that are involved in this route.
I think from our last conversation, you said you had contacted both of our U.S. senators as well as the local representatives. Have you received any responses from them?
it's an
I
ongoing.
would imagine that they would have, probably considerably more input and clout than.
And it's
We just met last week with Congressman Renacci. He asked a lot of excellent questions. He hasn't really given us an answer of what his position will be on this. Obviously, he's in favor of pipelines, which we are, we want to emphasize we are as well. We're in favor of these pipelines. We understand the importance of them. We just think there has to be a better process and that they have to consider some of these other issues in making these decisions.
And to try to summarize that, when I mentioned to the congressman that under the rules and the regulations, okay, that are set by safety standards set by DOT in this process, this pipeline could be built within 1 foot of a residence. Okay? As long as they bury it 4 feet underground, it could be built there. And he said, Paul, that couldn't possibly be. I live in Wadsworth, and the Wadsworth zoning ordinances would never allow that. Somebody responded, excuse me, Congressman, but the FERC certificate to proceed trumps local zoning ordinances and rules and regulations. So he said, I'm sure the PUCO and the Ohio Power Siting Board would never allow that to happen. Sorry, Congressman. The FERC certificate to proceed trumps state regulations. So by the Code of Federal Regulations, okay, Section CFR 195-210. I know so much anymore. I don't want to know all this, but
Are you dangerous yet?
I am. I'm dangerous because of It's like we're forced as individuals, as citizens, as landowners, to defend our own rights because back in 1938, the Natural Gas Act conferred upon FERC the power to give to a private company eminent domain. So the combination, this dangerous triangle of eminent domain, no safety setbacks, and they get to pick the route. Oh, by the way, people at FERC said it's not their job to propose reroutes. It's our responsibility. And they said it's wonderful that you guys are taking upon yourself with your own time, resources, and cooperation with the city of Green to propose a significant reroute away from these densely populated areas. But if you just think of this triangle, they get to pick the route, FERC gives them the power to take whatever land they want, and they can build this thing a foot from a house. And that's what I think we've kind of come to realize, and Congressman Renacci really helped us focus on that Friday, because we knew all these things, but we didn't kind of put it together. And that's what we're really saying today is, one of these, put it in a safety corridor that's been carefully engineered and, thoughtfully located so they don't get to pick the route.
I'm sure you've been through this many, many times. Does FERC look more on the environmental side of this thing, or are they looking more on the safety, or do they truly look for possibly the safest route? Again, I don't know what the standards are, and I don't know what the standards are associated with their determinations.
They take a look at all those aspects when they're reviewing a pipeline route. They do a thorough analysis, not only FERC, but the federal agencies as well as Ohio EPA. All of them, it's a strenuous regulation review that we go through for the project.
I will say, Congressman Renacci, the one comment he left us with is he said, I hear a lot of things in my job of people concerned about various things, and he said 99% of the time they don't have a solution. He said, what I like most about what you guys are doing is that you're not just coming to me with a problem, but you're telling me what the solution is. And that's our goal. We've resigned ourselves that we have to do this, we have to have a solution to it.
I'm just curious, can you appeal these decisions by FERC?
Yes.
I mean, is there appeals process? Does
Yes.
it go to federal court or?
Yes.
Is that how it
Yes.
goes? Okay.
Yeah.
We got a bunch of lawyers here.
Yeah, you're a wannabe lawyer.
This is part-time.
Anything from the commissioners? I know truly, both commissioners have appointments, I think, at 11:45 or 12 o'clock. Anything further, Commissioner?
I'm just glad we all had the discussion. As you said, that it's been hard to get everybody in the room together, and I think it's been enlightening for me and hopefully for everybody else.
Anything to wrap up with? Anybody want to make a last comment?
I think the only comment we have again is that we thank you for your time today, and we would really appreciate your support. We think it's important in our effort. I think we open the door to meet further with Spectra. We would like the opportunity to be involved in the details of looking at these alternative routes. We don't want to just accept that they're going to work within this existing 600-foot corridor, but we certainly open the door and welcome an opportunity to meet at a higher level and get into the details on this.
Safety is our core value. We've been building pipelines for decades in a safe and reliable manner, and we look forward to working with commissioners here in Stock County as we move forward.
We thank all of you for coming in, and we hope that Boston hits 100 inches this week. Thank you. We are now at 11:20 a.m. and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
John, can you say why Spectra that won't meet with the coalition?
Martin. Yeah, we've got you media packet.
Yeah.
And then let me refer you to.
Can I get an answer to the question I just asked
I'm going to
John?
refer you to Arthur Diestel.
Hi, Dr. Mark.
Who's the spokesman for the project. He's
Okay.
available today. He's available today at 2
Okay.
o'clock to give you a call.
Okay,
If you
good.
want to call him, okay?
Okay,
Just looking
thank
forward to your
you.
call.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you.
Mark.
Thank you.